Hello, and welcome back to part 4 of the dramatic reading of the Edge Chronicles Stormchaser. Today, we will be picking up at Chapter 7. Chapter 7, Ascent and Betrayal. Mother Horsefeather watched uneasily as the ancient figure approached Cloud Wolf. She knew from bitter experience that it could be disastrous to allow the different parties, the supply and demand, so to speak, to meet. Far better to remain in the middle, fixing the deal, pulling the strings. And yet, as Forficule had pointed out, since she had singularly failed to persuade Cloud Wolf to embark on the journey, the newcomer was their only hope. He leaned forwards and tapped Cloud Wolf with his staff. "Arise, Quintinius Virginix," he said. Twig watched his father climb to his feet and look up. He saw his eyes gleaming with reverence, with respect, and at that moment, Twig knew with absolute certainty who the old, shabbily dressed person must be. It was his father's erstwhile patron and mentor, the Professor of Light. "It has been a long time, Quintinius," he said. "The finest knight academic in 100 generations you were. Yet—" He paused and looked at Twig, seeing him for the first time. "Who is this Horsefeather?" he demanded. "The lad is with me," Cloud Wolf answered for her. "Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of him." "Are you sure?" the professor asked. "Quite sure," said Cloud Wolf, polite yet firm. The Professor of Light nodded resignedly. "We failed you, Quintinius Virginix. I appreciate that. Now we come to you, cap in hand. We need your help." Watching his father shuffling about under the professor's penetrating gaze, Twig was reminded of himself. And when Cloud Wolf spoke, it was his own faltering tones that Twig heard in his voice. That is, Mother Horsefeather has already outlined the problem." "Indeed," said the professor, surprised. "Then you will understand the gravity of the situation. Or should that be the lack of gravity of the situation?" he added, chuckling at his own little joke. Cloud Wolf smiled weakly. "Sanctifrax is truly in danger, then," he said. "It could break free of its moorings at any moment," the professor said. "We must have fresh supplies of Stormfrax." Cloud Wolf listened in silence. "The Wind Touchers and Cloud Watchers have already confirmed that a great storm is imminent," the professor continued. "By the time it arrives, someone must be ready to chase it to the Twilight Woods so that he might retrieve the Stormfrax it creates. And that someone, my dear Quintinius Virginix," he said, "is you. There's not another soul alive equal to the task. Will you help us, or will you see Sanctifrax cast forever into open sky?" Cloud Wolf stared back impassively. Twig couldn't begin to guess the thoughts spinning round his head. Yes or no? Which was the answer to be? Then Cloud Wolf gave the slightest of nods to the Professor of Light's proposal. Twig's heart pounded with excitement. No matter how minimal the response, his father had accepted. They were to go storm-chasing. On the other side of the door, with his ear pressed against the wood, someone else was excited to hear the proposed voyage to the Twilight Woods. It was Slivo Spleeth, the Stormchaser's quartermaster. He listened carefully to the plans being made, memorizing each and every detail mentioned. There were those who would pay well for such information. At the sound of chairs being pushed back, Spleeth pulled away from the door and slipped back into the bar room. He couldn't be caught eavesdropping now. The good captain would discover soon enough that his plans had been overheard. By Undertown standards, the leaks chamber was luxurious. That is, there were floorboards rather than trodden earth underfoot, and there was glass in the majority of the windows. Most of the room was taken up with a giant ring-shaped table, at which were seated all the senior leaguesmen who had been available at such short notice. In the circular hole at the center of the table was a swivel stool, and upon this sat Slivo Spleeth. Simenon Zintax, the leaguesmaster, rapped loudly on the table with his gavel. "Order!" he bellowed. "Order!" The league's chamber fell silent, and all eyes turned towards him. Zintax arose from his chair. "Tricorn miters on," he said, and there was a flurry of activity as each of the leaguesmen picked up their headgear and put it into place. Zintax nodded approvingly. "I declare open this emergency session of the Undertown League of Free Merchants," he announced. "Let the questioning commence." The leaguesmen remained silent, waiting for Zintax, as chairperson, to frame the first question. The most important question. The question that would set the tone for all subsequent questions. For truth, as the leaguesmen were aware, was a slippery thing. It had to be approached with care if it was not to change into something completely different. Zintax took his seat. "If we were to ask you, Slivo Spleef, whether you be an honest individual," he began, in the contorted form that tradition demanded, "how would you verily reply?" Spleef gulped. Now that's a difficult one, he thought. Certainly he intended to answer the leaguesman's questions honestly. But as to whether he himself was honest, well, an honest person wouldn't have been eavesdropping in the first place. He shrugged and wiped away the droplets of sweat from above his top lip. "It's like this, you see," he began. "You will answer the question with a yes or no," Zintax interrupted. "You will answer all questions with a yes or a no. Nothing more, nothing less. Is that quite clear?" "Yes," said Spleef. Zintax nodded approvingly. "So I repeat, if we were to ask you, Slivo Spleef, whether you be an honest individual, how would you verily reply?" "No," said Spleef. A ripple of surprise went round the table. Then all the leaguesmen thrust their arms up into the air. "Aye, aye, aye, aye," they called, each one trying to grab the chairperson's attention. "Leandus Leadbelly, gutters and gouges," he said. Leandus, a short, angry-looking character with one dark eyebrow which ran the width of his heavy brow, nodded towards Spleef. "If we were to ask you whether you have information concerning your captain, Cloud Wolf, the former Quintinius Virginix, how would you verily reply?" Spleef swiveled round to face his questioner. "Yes," he said. "Farquhar Armright," said Zintax. "Glue slappers and rope teasers." "If we were to ask you whether the Stormchaser was currently skyworthy, how would you verily reply?" "No," said Spleef, swiveling back again. "Elarex Earthclay, Melders and Moulders." "If we were to ask you whether, should the need arise, you would be prepared to kill one of your fellow crew members, how would you verily reply?" Spleef breathed in sharply. "Yes." And so it continued. The leaguesmen put their questions and Spleef answered them. One after the other after the other. There was no order to the questions. At least, if there was, then Spleef was blind to it. As far as he was concerned, it would have made far more sense if he'd been allowed to tell them precisely what he'd overheard. But no. The interrogation continued, with the questions coming thicker and faster as time went on. Little by little, the entire story was revealed, and not just the bare facts. By pursuing the information so obliquely, the leaguesmen managed to build up a picture, complete in every single detail, and with it, the knowledge of precisely what to do. Simenon Zintax arose for a second time. He raised his arms. "The questioning be concluded," he said. "If we were to ask you, Slivo Spleef, to swear allegiance to the Undertown League of Free Merchants, forswearing all other ties and pledging obedience to our will, how would you verily reply?" Spleef's head was in a whirl. From the questions they had framed, he guessed that untold wealth was on offer. Plus a skyship of his own. Plus, most important of all, league status. But he also knew precisely what was expected of him. And for such a feat, Spleef wanted more than wealth. He wanted power. "I answer this with a question of my own, be it permitted," he began. Zintax nodded. "If I were to ask you whether, for the successful conclusion of this hazardous endeavor, I might become the new League's Master of Undertown League of Free Merchants, how would you verily reply?" Zintax's eyes narrowed. He had learned much about Slivo Spleef through the questioning. The quartermaster, he knew, was a greedy creature, treacherous and self-important. His question came as no surprise. "Yes," he answered. In that case, Spleeth smiled, my answer be also yes. On hearing his reply, the leaguesmen all climbed solemnly to their feet, clutched their tricorn miters to their breasts, and hung their head. Simenon Zintac spoke for them all. We have asked, you have answered, and a deal has been struck, he said. But be sure of this, Spleeth. If you should attempt to dupe, deceive, or double-cross us, we shall not rest until you have been hunted down and destroyed. Do you understand? Spleeth stared back grimly. Yes, he said, I understand. But be aware, Zintax, that what is true for the wood boar is also true for the sow. Those who cross me do not live long enough to tell the tale. Back in the stuffy room behind the bar of the Blood Oak Tavern, a mood of optimism held sway. Once business had been concluded, with the flurry of double handshakes the ritual required, Mother Horsefeather had rung a bell to summon her servants. It was time for the feast which had been prepared to celebrate the successful conclusion to the deal. The food was delicious and plentiful, and the wood ale flowed freely. Twig sat in contented silence, listening with only half an ear as the others talked on and on. Stormchasing! Stormchasing! It was all he could think about, and his heart thrilled with anticipation. I still think it was very forward of you to assume that we'd come to an agreement, he heard Cloud Wolf chuckling as he tucked into his succulent Hamelhorn steak. Who's to say that I would not have provided a meal even if we had not? Mother Horsefeather said. I say so, said Cloud Wolf. I know you, Mother Horsefeather. If you do anything for nothing, do it for yourself. Isn't that how the saying goes? Mother Horsefeather clacked her beak with amusement. Oh, Wolfie, she said. You are a one. She rose to her feet and lifted her glass. Since, however, the matter has been settled to everyone's succession, I would like to propose a toast. To success, she said. To success, came the enthusiastic response. The Professor of Light turned to Cloud Wolf. I am so very glad you have consented, he said warmly. After all, I would not have liked to entrust so valuable a cargo to a lesser person. You mean the Stormfrax, Cloud Wolf said. We've got to find the stuff first. No, Quintinius, not the Stormfrax, the Professor said and laughed. I was talking about myself, for I shall be accompanying you. Together with your skill and my knowledge, we shall return with enough Stormfrax to end the current madness of chain building once and for all. Cloud Wolf frowned. But won't Vilnix be suspicious should he get wind of it? That's where we come in, Mother Horsefeather said, and nodded towards the Nightwaif. Tomorrow morning, Forthique will pay a visit to Sanctifrax to announce the Professor of Light's tragic accident and untimely death. I see that between you, you've thought of everything, said Cloud Wolf. There is, however, one last thing I have to say, he turned to Twig. I know, Twig laughed. But it's all right. I promise I won't mess up on this voyage, not even once. No, Twig, you will not, said Cloud Wolf sternly, for you are not coming with us. Twig gasped. His face fell, his heart sank. How could his father say such a thing? But what will I do? Where will I go? He asked. It's all right, Twigsy, he heard Mother Horsefeather saying. It's all been sorted. You're to stay with me. No, Twig muttered, hardly able to take in what was happening. You can't do this to me. It's not fair. Twig, his father barked. Be still. But Twig could not be still. You just don't trust me, do you? He shouted. You think I'm no good at anything. You think I'm useless. No, Twig, he broke in. I do not think you are useless. And one day, sky willing, you will become a formidable sky pirate captain. Of that, I am sure. But, at the moment, you lack experience. And how will I get that experience if you leave me behind? Twig demanded. Besides, he said hotly, no one alive has any experience of storm chasing. Not even you! Cloud Wolf did not rise to the bait. I have made my decision, he said calmly. You can accept it with good grace, or you can rant and rave like a child. Either way, you are not coming. And that is an end to it. Chapter 8. Departure. "Setting sail," Tem Barkwater exclaimed. "That's what the stone pilot reckons," said Spiker. "Ah, but that's admirable news," said Tem. "Why, 3 days ago, after all the trouble with the ironwood, and then losing the rudder wheel like that, I had truly feared the Stormchaser might never set sail again. Yeah, now look at her, all fixed and ready and raring to go. I ain't never seen the brasses gleam so bright." "And not just the brasses," said Stoke Boltjaw. "Haven't you noticed the sails and ropes? And the rigging? Brand spanking new, the lot of 'em." "And the weight workings have been tuned to perfection as well," said Spiker. "We must be about to embark on something very important," said Tem Barkwater, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "You don't need to be a genius to work that one out," said Stoke Boltjaw. "The question is, what?" Tem shook his head. "I'm sure the captain will tell us when he's good and ready," he said. "Aye, well," said Stoke Boltjaw, "if we are to set sail, then we'd do well to leave now under the cover of darkness." "On the contrary," said Tem Barkwater, "we should bide our time and wait till morning." "What, and set off in full view of the League patrols?" said Stoke Boltjaw. "You taking leave of your senses?" "Not I, Stope," Tem retorted. "It is you who has forgotten that, with the Stormchaser as she is now, we could outrun any and every League ship they care to send after us." "Yes, but," Stope protested. "And anyhow," Tem Barkwater went on, "the Maya's a treacherous place at the best of times. Crossing it in darkness is madness. What with them poisonous blowholes erupting all round about? And no way to attach the grappling irons in a storm. Not to mention that it's impossible to see where the sky ends and the ground begins. I remember once. Couldn't have been much more than a lad at the time. We were on our way back from..." He was interrupted by Spiker. "It's the captain," he hissed. "And he's not alone." Tem Barkwater fell silent, and he, Stope Boltjaw, and Spiker turned to greet the two figures climbing the gangplank. "Captain," said Tem warmly. "Just the person I wanted to see. Perhaps you could settle a little dispute for us. Stope here maintains that..." "No, Tem, I can't," Cloudwolf snapped. He peered round into the darkness. "Where's Hubble?" "Below deck, Captain," said Tem, "with Mugbutt. I believe the pair of them are helping the stone pilot make his final adjustments to the new rudder wheel." Cloudwolf nodded. "And Spleeth?" The Sky Pirate shrugged. "Spleeth we haven't seen," said Tem Barkwater. "We lost him in Undertown. He must still be on shore." Cloudwolf turned on him furiously. "He what?" he roared. "How many times do I have to tell you that Slivo Spleeth is never ever to be left to his own devices? Who knows what he might be up to now?" "One minute he was with us in the Blood Oak," Stope Boltjaw explained. "And the next minute he was gone." Cloudwolf shook his head in disbelief. "Spleeth is our quartermaster," he explained to the Professor of Light. "A slippery character with a mutinous heart. I've half a mind to sail without him. Trouble is, he's good at his job. And a twig staying behind that'll put us 2 crewmen down." He shook his head. "I can't risk it." "Twig staying behind," Tem Barkwater said, surprised. "Has a lad fallen ill?" "No, Tem, he has not," Cloudwolf said angrily. "There is no concern of yours what has happened to him. But..." "Enough!" he shouted. "I will not have such insubordination in front of our guest." He turned to the Professor of Light. "Now, if you'd like to follow me, sire, I'll show you to your quarters myself." "Thank you, I should like that," the Professor said. "There are a few last-minute calculations I need to work on before we set sail." Quite," said Cloudwolf, and ushered the Professor away before he could say too much about the proposed voyage. The 3 Sky Pirates looked at one another in confusion. Who was this old character? Why was Twig not coming with them? And where were they going? Cloudwolf suddenly spun round. "Idle speculation is the pastime of the fool," he remarked, causing them all to look down guiltily at the deck. "You will inform me the moment Spleeth returns," he said. Aye, Captain," came the reply. Twig stared down miserably into his glass of wood fizz. Mother Horsefeather had poured the drink long ago. To raise his spirits, she commented to Forficule. Now it was warm and flat. All round him, the drunken revelry continued at full throttle. There was raucous laughter and loud swearing. Tales were told, songs were sung, violent arguments broke out as the flathead and hammerhead goblins became increasingly volatile. At the stroke of midnight, a lumpen she-troll started up a snake dance, and within minutes, the whole tavern was squirming with a long line of individuals winding its way round and round the room. "Oi, cheer up, mate," Twig heard. "It might never happen." He turned and found himself face to face with a grinning mob gnome standing beside him. "It already has," he sighed. Puzzled, the mob gnome shrugged and returned to the dance. Twig turned back. He placed his elbows on the bar, rested his head in his hands with his fingers clamped firmly over his ears, and closed his eyes. "Why did you have to leave me here?" he whispered. "Why?" Of course he knew what his father would reply. "I'm only thinking of your well-being." Or, "One day you'll thank me for this." Or, worst of all, "It's all for your own good." Twig felt his sadness and regret shifting, by degrees, to anger. It was not good for him, not good at all. Life on the Stormchaser was good. Being with his father after so long a separation was good. Sailing the skies in pursuit of wealth and riches was good. But being placed in the charge of Mother Horsefeather and her seething, seedy tavern while the Stormchaser and its crew set off on so wonderful a voyage, that was unutterably bad. Torturing himself all the more, Twig thought of everything he was missing. He imagined how it must feel to be sucked along in the wake of a great storm. He tried to envisage the single lightning bolt as it froze in midair and turned to solid storm fracks. And he asked himself what it must be like inside the notorious Twilight Woods. For although the Stormchaser had often passed above them, none of the sky pirates had ever risked venturing down. Would they be like the deep woods of his childhood, he wondered? Endless luxuriant forests, teeming with life, filled with all manner of trees, from humming lullabies to flesh-eating blood oaks, and home to countless tribes and villagers of every kind? Or were they indeed as mysteriously treacherous as the legends described? A place of endless degeneration, a place of confusion and delusion, a place of madness. That was how the storytellers spoke of the Twilight Woods, as they passed their tales on, word of mouth down the generations. Twig sighed. Now he would never know. What should have been the greatest adventure of his life had been snatched cruelly away by his own father. Even if it had been done for his own safety, because he was, as Cloud Wolf had put it, important to him. Even if that was the case, the fact remained that to Twig, it felt like a punishment. "And it's just not fair," he complained. "What's not fair?" came a voice at his elbow. Twig started. If it was the ridiculous grinning mob gnome trying to get him to dance again, he would give him what for. He spun round angrily. "Spleef," he said. "Master Twig," said Spleef, his narrow lips curling to reveal a set of stained and crooked teeth. "I thought it was you. Just the person I was looking for. Though it saddens me, of course, to see you so down in the mouth," he added. Twig frowned. "You were looking for me," he said. "Indeed I was," Spleef purred as he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. And Twig swallowed queasily at the sight of the quartermaster's hand, with its missing fingers and mess of puckered skin. "You see, I couldn't help noticing that you were present during the discussions between the good captain and the bird woman." "What if I was?" said Twig suspiciously. "It's just that, well, although naturally the captain has filled me in on all the details of our little venture." Twig was surprised. "He has?" "Of course he has," Spleeth said. "Chasing the great storm to the Twilight Woods. The quest for the sacred Stormfrax. I know it all. It's just that one's memory, you understand. That is..." Spleeth was fishing. The League's master had demanded even more of him than he'd expected. Taking the Stormchaser, killing Cloud Wolf, delivering the Stormfrax. His task would be difficult, and he'd kicked himself for leaving the Blood Oak Tavern so hastily before. After all, if he was to be successful, he needed to know everything about the meeting, including the part which took place after his departure. Silly of me, I know, he continued slyly, but I cannot for the life of me how Cloud Wolf said the meeting was concluded. Twig's reaction took the quartermaster by surprise. Concluded, he said angrily. I'll tell you how it was concluded. I was told to remain here in Undertown with Mother Horsefeather, while the rest of you go sailing off to the Twilight Woods. Spleet's brow furrowed. Remain here, he repeated softly. Tell me more, Master Twig, he said. Open up your heart. Struggling to fight back the tears, Twig shook his head. But Master Twig, Spleeth persisted, his voice whiny and wheedling, a problem shared is a problem halved. And of course, if there's anything that I can do, anything at all. It's the captain, Twig blurted out. He says he's worried about my safety, but I don't believe him. I can't believe him. He's ashamed of me, that's what it is, he sobbed. Ashamed to have such a gangly, blundering oaf for a son. Slivo Spleet's eyebrows shot upwards with surprise. Cloud Wolf, the lad's father. Now that was interesting. Very interesting indeed. And his head spun with ways in which he could use this latest piece of information to his advantage. Composing himself, he laid his hand on Twig's shoulder. The captain has a good heart, he said softly, and I'm sure he has your best interest in mind, yet... Twig sniffed and listened. Yet there's a fine line between being protective and being overprotective, he said. Why, the trip to the Twilight Woods would be the making of you. Twig scowled. Not now it won't, he muttered. He shook Spleet's bony hand off his shoulder and turned away. Why don't you just go? He said. For an instant a smile flickered at the edge of Spleet's mouth, then it was gone. Master Twig, he said, I do not intend to return to the Stormchaser alone. I believe, and here I must speak frankly, I believe that Cloud Wolf has earned his judgment. Of course you must accompany us on our Twilight Woods adventure. That is my plan, he said, and brought his face close to Twig's. His breath was stale and sour. We will smuggle you aboard. You can stow away below deck in Mugbutt's berth. No one will ever suspect you of hiding there. Twig continued to listen in silence. It all sounded too good to be true. Yet he knew well enough that Cloud Wolf would find him eventually. There would be trouble when he did. It'll all be fine, you'll see, Spleet's nasal wheedling continued. When the time is right, I myself shall reveal your presence to Cloud Wolf. I'll talk him round. I'll make him see sense. You just leave it all to me. Twig nodded. Spleet squeezed Twig's elbow with his hard, bony fingers. Come on then, let's go, he said, before I change my mind. All was not well on board the Stormchaser. The crew stood nervously by while their captain paced up and down the quarterdeck, purple with rage. The Professor of Light, freshly kitted out with a pirate long coat and pair-wings, had informed the captain that the great storm could strike at any minute. That was several hours ago, yet the sky ship had still not set sail. Cloud Wolf ceased his pacing, seized the side rail, and bellowed into the night. Spleeth, you miserable excuse for a mangy sky cur! Where are you? At your service, Captain, came a familiar voice. Cloud Wolf spun round to see the quartermaster emerging from the aft hatch. He stared in disbelief. Spleeth, he spluttered. You're here! I thought you called me, he said innocently. I've been calling you for 3 hours or more, Cloud Wolf raged. Where have you been? With Mugbutt, Spleeth replied. A wound to his foot has become infected. Septic and swollen it is. The poor creature was quite delirious. The captain breathed in sharply. It seemed he'd found his quartermaster only to lose his finest fighter. Mugbutt was fearless in any battle, and had gotten them out of more scrapes than Cloud Wolf cared to remember. How is Mugbutt now? He asked. I've left him sleeping, said Spleeth. Sky willing, he'll be back to his old self when he wakes. Cloud Wolf nodded. Setting sail for the treacherous twilight woods without Mugbutt was a risk. And yet, with the great storm imminent, it was a risk he had to take. He raised his head. "Gather round," he called. "I have something important to tell you all." Sky pirates listened, open-mouthed, as Cloud Wolf outlined the plans. "Stormchasing," Tem Barkwater whispered reverently. "The Twilight Woods," Spiker shuddered. Cloud Wolf continued. "And our quest will be, as it ever was, to retrieve Stormfrax for the treasury of Sanctifrax." "Stormfrax?" Salivo Spleeth, feigning surprise, exclaimed with the rest. "Yes, Stormfrax," said Cloud Wolf. "That is why the Professor of Light is traveling with us. He understands its properties. He will ensure we travel safely with our precious cargo." Spleeth frowned. So that was who the newcomer was. If only he'd known before. "Right then, you scurvy sky curs," Cloud Wolf announced. "To your posts! We'll set sail at once!" While the sky pirates scurried this way and that, Cloud Wolf strode to the helm. "Release the tally ropes!" he cried. "Aye, aye!" Spiker called back. "Tally ropes released!" "Unhook the grappling irons!" "Grappling irons unhooked!" "And weigh anchor!" As the heavy anchor was winched up, the Stormchaser leapt from its moorings and up into the sky. "Come on, my lovely," Cloud Wolf whispered to his sky ship as it bucked and lurched, responding to the lightest touch of the weight and sail levers. "My, but you're frisky once more, just like you were when you were first built. Forgive me for all the times I used you as a common tug ship. I had no choice. But now, my wonderful chaser of storms, your time has come." As the dawn broke, and keeping both Tem Barkwater and Stoke Bolchaw happy, the Stormchaser sailed majestically out of Undertown, unchecked. Wispy wings of pink and orange fanned out across the morning side of the sky. A moment later, the sun appeared above the horizon on the starboard side. It rose slowly, bright red and tremulous. Cloud Wolf sighed impatiently. The weather looked unpromisingly good. What had happened to the great storm the Wind Touchers and Cloud Watchers had predicted, that the Professor of Light himself had just confirmed? Just then, Spiker let out a yell from his lookout. "Storm to port!" he cried. The captain spun round and peered into the distance. At first he could make out nothing unusual in the featureless darkness of the receding night. But then there was a flash, and another. Short, dazzling bursts of light in the shape of a circle which, when the lightning faded, still remained, black on indigo, growing larger with every passing second. The lightning flashed again, and Cloud Wolf saw that it was not a circle, but rather a ball. An immense, fizzing, crackling ball of electrical energy, darkness and light combined, which was rolling headlong across the sky towards them. "It's the Great Storm!" he roared above the howl of the rising wind. "Unfurl the mainsail, batten down the hatches, and rope yourselves securely. We're going storm chasing!"